We're looking at the war in Iran from multiple angles, starting with what the White House is saying about America's strategy. It changes by the day. What are journalists to make of it? Why have the Iranian authorities maintained their large-scale internet blackout in a time of war? They insist they have their reasons. Why is Israel saying that certain Gulf states are on its side? Is anybody buying that? Plus, the AI angle.
We have a complete muddying up of who made the decision to kill to begin with.
How is that technology being used to target Iranians? And are we approaching the end of accountability? The war on Iran is entering its third week, and what began chaotically has only grown worse. In terms of weaponry, the military capabilities of the warring parties, it should be no contest. The U.S. and Israel hold the upper hand, except that Iran is fighting a different kind of war. It is responding asymmetrically, unconventionally, targeting various economic pressure points, making clear that the battlefield extends well beyond its borders. When it comes to the information war, the messaging that's coming out of Washington has been erratic, at times contradictory, and largely ineffective. Tel Aviv is fully engaged on the propaganda side, pushing, amongst other things, a far-fetched narrative relating to the Gulf states, Arab ones, implying that they support Israel in this war. The denials from those states have been quick in coming. If you are having difficulty keeping up with it all, you are not alone. Censorship, varying degrees of it, has been imposed in the countries at war, and coupled with the propaganda that's out there, news consumers are dealing with a maze of information. This was the week that the war the Americans and the Israelis launched against Iran grew significantly more global. An emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council underscored that.
The draft resolution has not been adopted
and reinforced just how powerless the UN is to end the fighting. The worst of the collateral damage has been economic, and it extends well beyond the Middle East. The war has disrupted, in some cases upended, global supply chains. It has rattled stock markets and pushed up the cost of energy, affecting what people, including Americans, will pay to heat their homes and what they are already paying at the pump.
Iran is trying to wage war against oil prices. If Iran could raise the price of oil to $100 a barrel, it inflicts equal or more damage to the United States than American bombs do to Iran. So Iran is fighting on a very different battlefield. It's fighting against American economic power. It is a war that ultimately will be decided by whose threshold of pain is higher.
Asymmetrical forms of warfare are challenging for news consumers to grasp. The munitions math, for instance. It is unclear how many ballistic missiles and drones the Iranians have, how long their stocks will last. To hear the Trump administration tell it, that doesn't really matter.
We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
The president and his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, are talking like they can dictate what happens next.
Whether they know it or not, they will be combat ineffective. They will surrender.
For all the bravado, though, the shifting, conflicting messaging coming out of this administration indicates that it doesn't know where this story is going either.
We're in a truly unprecedented moment where the rhetoric coming out of the White House is so bellicose.
Epic fury!
And so over the top that it's almost impossible to judge what they actually believe, what they mean, what they intend to do. And part of it is just this truly bizarre United States administration that's nothing like we've ever seen before.
These are people who believe that U.S. military power can pretty much solve any problem. It will not solve this problem. I mean, we should have learned over the last 20 plus years of the global war on terror, the invasions and occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq, where we couldn't solve these problems militarily.
There are very experienced and very smart analysts in the Pentagon, and they've long understood Iran's asymmetric strategy.
The war between Iran on one side and the U.S. and Israel on the other is a perfect example of asymmetric warfare.
It just seems that this has just been disregarded by political decision makers And clearly, Donald Trump is being led by the nose by the Israelis, who had been claiming that this would be a walk in the park.
Could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war.
Al Jazeera has a permanent presence in Iran, journalists based there. This past week, CNN became the first Western news outlet to get a team into the Islamic Republic since the war began. That presence matters, since some of the images CNN has been beaming out challenge the narrative coming out of Washington, Tel Aviv, and on occasion, CNN's own studios in the US.
Now Iran is firing missiles at Arab countries. If any other country did that, I think there'd be a huge hue and outcry and like huge marches in the streets.
Although most American news outlets have not been as complicit in selling this war as they were in 2003, when U.S. forces were targeting Baghdad.
Compared to the Iraq war, the American media is being much more critical because of the completely unclear messaging coming from the Trump administration.
We didn't have a clear answer to the question, what constitutes success in this war, when we went into it, and so now we don't know how to get out of it.
They're giving contradictory answers the whole time. We're hearing a lot of dissent from within Congress.
President Trump is lying to the American people about this war.
And that validates and gives permission to the media to be more critical of this war. And it's reassuring that CNN is broadcasting from Iran. The Iranian regime understand that the images of the people who've been bombed are always going to elicit more sympathy than the country dropping those bombs.
The media was very quick to ask questions about why are we in this war? What is the justification?
Peter, have you ever seen an administration launch a preemptive war with this sort of third-party defense reasoning?
But the media is not questioning enough about how this war is being conducted. They're not asking, show us what damage have been done to military bases. There's too much accepting what the Pentagon says at face value.
On CNN, you had an Israeli government-affiliated analyst to explain what the Iranian people are thinking and how much they really support Americans and Israelis dropping bombs on them.
By and large, the responses from Iranians that I've spoken to has been overwhelmingly in favor of the United States and Israeli action on the ground.
And this is just absolutely absurd on its face. But the good news is that fewer and fewer Americans actually pay attention to this stuff. And I think the fact that this war is so unpopular is a reflection of that.
While letting foreign journalists in, the Iranian authorities are still keeping foreign news content, including Western propaganda, out. But that is just part of the rationale for the continued clampdown on the internet. Restrictions put in place during the anti-government protests across Iran in January. Iranian officials, however, are able to get the word out, messaging Americans and Israelis, telling them that Iran and its counterattacks are just getting started. Iranian citizens can still communicate with each other online, but only about 1% of normal internet traffic there is currently reaching the outside world.
It makes it much more difficult to communicate, but Iran does have a national internet, which people can use internally. It's the access to the outside that they've cut off. And the reasoning for that is that they're trying to control the way in which social media, propaganda, satellite televisions, etc., can influence Iranians' reaction to the war. In recent few years, social media and satellite television outside has been quite influential with the Iranian public. And also the internet can be used for information gathering in war by Israel and the United States. So they're trying to blind the US and Israel from being able to use Iranian internet to conduct the war.
The United States and Israel have weaponized Iran's internet infrastructure against it to undertake cyber attacks on banks and financial institutions, on vital and critical infrastructures. So that's important. And various sympathetic pundits obviously have access to the internet and come on Western channels and articulate their position.
Well, Iran is hammering the Israeli regime in retaliation for its atrocities.
But internet access becomes quite uneven in these contexts. And so it means that our picture is going to be stilted and it's going to be fragmentary.
Meanwhile, in Israeli media and political circles, another narrative has been put out there on where the Gulf states really stand on this war. The media side of it started with the Jerusalem Post, reporting that Qatar and the UAE, states that have had their issues with the Islamic Republic, had quietly joined the Israelis, launching covert attacks on Iran. The Israeli ambassador to the UN went on air with that, telling Israel's Channel 12 about supposed coordination with those governments.
יש קשר שקט, ואני מכבד את זה. הם לא רוצים להיראות שהם עובדים איתנו בצורה גלויה.
The Qataris and Emiratis quickly denied that, insisting that their militaries are engaging with Iranian drones and missiles entering their airspace, but that it's all defensive. The Israelis are well skilled when it comes to disinformation, how to confuse, divide, and conquer. This latest tactic, however, is unlikely to work, given the Gulf states involved, their domestic politics, and recent history.
It's very, very unlikely that we'll see Gulf states join an Israeli-U.S. war effort against Iran, especially in the wake of Gaza. Saudi Arabia and others are quite conscious of the anger that their own public still have against the U.S. and Israel for the genocide in Gaza. The attack on Doha back in June, the so-called 12-day war, was a wake-up call. Even for countries that are not huge fans of Iran, they don't want to live in a region where Israel dominates and attacks at will.
Whether they're true or not, I don't think that the leaks of various actions taken by Gulf countries in this war are intended to harm those countries. They're intended primarily for domestic Israeli consumption, to make Israelis feel better about the prospects of success.
The one place where this war is supported is in Israel. So if you look at Israeli polling, it has been very, very supportive for the war in Iran because of the degree to which the Israeli public is also propagandized. So that's why we have this very confected and contrived picture, which is all part of the propaganda war.
Staying with the war and the seemingly coordinated Israeli media reports about Gulf states allegedly attacking Iran, Tariq Nafi has been tracking the coverage of that story.
The view that Israel and its media are using disinformation to drag the Gulf states into a war of Israel's making has fueled days of heated reporting and commentary.
وسط هذا الضجيج الإعلامي تتكشف الأهداف الخفية، جر الخليج إلى مستنقع الحرب وتحويل المنطقة بأسرها إلى بركان توترات لا يهدأ.
Prominent figures across the Arab world, some of them known as channels for official thinking, have been blunt in their anger towards the US for siding with Israel and its designs for the region at the expense of the Gulf's security. All of these countries have expressed fury and even a sense of betrayal at Iran's continuing attacks on them. In the case of Israel, it has been notable how clumsy attempts to involve Gulf states in this war have set back Israeli efforts to normalize relations with those countries. There was a strongly worded statement from Oman's foreign minister saying his country would not normalize with Israel, and this from former Saudi intelligence chief Turki al-Faisal on CNN.
Forget normalization. Let alone what Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank. This is Netanyahu's war. You talked about the dog and the tail, who's wagging who. It is definitely Mr. Netanyahu.
Since the first attacks on Iran, the White House and the Pentagon have struggled to contain their enthusiasm over their chance to test out the latest military hardware and software at their disposal. The U.S. has spent years investing in AI-enabled targeting systems, autonomous weapons, and long-range so-called precision missiles, tools that make identifying and striking targets easier, faster, and more dangerous than ever. And as has been the case in Gaza, AI-powered systems appear to be playing a central role in how this war is being conducted, guiding decisions that have life and death consequences. Matt Mahmoudi is a researcher with Amnesty Tech, as well as an assistant professor at Cambridge University. He's been digging into this topic for a while now and joins us here in the studio. Matt, Donald Trump boasts about having the greatest military in the world. Is this the moment, do you think, that he and the Pentagon, the Department of War, have been waiting for to test their vision of what war in the future looks like?
It's clear that we're watching a new form of warfare emerge, and we've seen this going back to the start of the genocide in Gaza. We saw target acquisition systems like Lavender and Gospel that rely on large tranches of information, things like social media data, any databases that the government might hold, to make determinations about whether someone is a combatant or not. In the context of what we might be witnessing here in Iran and the Middle East through the use of a large language model, we're seeing a lot of those same technologies packaged together in a effectively chat prompt-based interface that allows the military to go in and simply put in a human speak level prompt that asks for particular targets to be generated that have particular characteristics. There is this zealousness and overzealousness with the even idea that you can simply have a quick in and out strike through the use of artificial intelligence systems. Of course, it is an opportunistic moment that the US government seems to have taken. And we've seen this also through their relationships with tech companies who were all too happy, even just before, days before the war, to provide their technology, no questions asked, until the very, very last moment.
Now, we've seen how devastating some of these AI-powered strikes can be. That girls' school in Minab, a bombing that killed at least 165 schoolgirls and staff. From what you are seeing, how lethal, though, how accurate, and just how autonomous are these systems?
It is incredibly difficult to say how accurate these systems are because it really comes down to what your understanding of accuracy in these systems are. We look at things like Lavender, target acquisition systems, for example, in which there is a claim that by using disparate sources of data, you can generate a list of targets that can be hit with precision, but when you end up with a list that's, say, a list of 40,000 names, you start to wonder, who vetted these names? How do we end up with these names? Was it simply by proximity to particular facilities? Was it through posts that people made on social media? These probabilistic systems work simply through a relational approach in which you, having been connected, for example, on a social media profile to a particular individual who may have said something or who may have a particular affiliation, renders you a threat. In the same case, we're seeing in Iran now thousands of airstrikes on what seems like indiscriminate grounds, right? And you start to wonder, to what extent is there any accuracy at play at all? Sure, if your aim is to decimate the entire country, you could make the argument that you have acted with great accuracy in performing the devastation across Iran. But did you achieve the goal of eliminating the particular individuals that, say, you were interested in targeting? And this is where target acquisition gets it wrong. It is an AI washing of the attempt to establish a legitimate target. It's simply saying that because the system said that these targets are the correct one, that makes it a legitimate target, which is a violation of international law because individuals who are in the chain of command have not actively been involved in actually vetting and understanding who they're targeting and why.
Another way to put it is, no matter how advanced these systems are, the failings come at the end where the human component still is.
That's correct. And in the context of, for example, the disputes, the controversy between Anthropic and the US government, you see an instance in which Anthropic is insisting that they have a restriction written into the contract that they hold with the US government, with the Department of War, that says that they are against the usage of autonomous weapon systems without oversight. However, at this rate, oversight can be defined in any number of ways. The US government can say that somebody had a look at the list of targets for 15 seconds, for 2 minutes, and they deemed that as sufficient without ever having interrogated how the particular large language model arrived at the actual list in the first place. So the oversight itself is incredibly permissive.
So Anthropic's beef with Trump and Trump's beef with Anthropic, we read about that, we saw the news reports, but are they the outlier here? Are they the only ones who are fighting back?
The interesting framing here is the fighting back component of it, because the company was very willing to enter this contract to begin with. with the US government, with the Pentagon, and we've seen a number of other AI companies that have, over the last few years, entered contracts with the Pentagon and Department of War, with the US Immigration Customs Enforcement, who has been actively involved in military tactics in the streets of Minnesota, of Minneapolis. And so the involvement of AI companies in tactics of warfare is not new. The fact that Anthropic was able to demonstrate resistance merely days before the strikes took place, the preemptive airstrikes on Iran, allowed them to position themselves at a moral high ground that lets them, on the one hand, sell their product for being incredibly potent in the context of warfare. As we see now, a couple of weeks on from the initial strikes, it has been revealed by reports that Claude, which is their product, may have been used in the context of the airstrikes in Iran, which again gives them potency as a brand and as a company that's developing this technology. They can also posture to the fact that they resisted the government, and in fact you should be using their product at every turn because they are the good guys in this context. And that dichotomy that they're able to balance as a company of, on the one hand, having developed a product that can be used at scale for warfare, and on the other hand also being, again, the morally superior AI company, allows them to bring in the profit, the kind of reach that AI companies can only dream of.
The use of these systems can make it difficult for some people to determine whether some of these attacks were deliberate, the result of intelligence failures, or the result of errors in AI itself. Is that creating a way for militaries to evade accountability and just say the machine got it wrong?
It's really important to understand that under international law, you have to have a legitimate target under international humanitarian law when it comes to airstrikes, when it comes to the use of force. And you have to have a chain of command in which there is accountability of some variety. There has to be a clear understanding of who is exercising the command and who is then following the command. With the insertion of AI, we have a complete muddying up of who made the decision to kill to begin with. Was it the system? Was it the designer who designed the tool to begin with? Was it the person who sat and operated the interface or took the indicator that it was giving the person? And these are fundamentally questions that mean that these systems are more likely to automate killing at scale and create a sort of a dehumanization because it doesn't allow for individuals that operate them to really get into the weeds of interrogating systems that they simply follow. We have been calling constantly at Amnesty International, at the Stop Killer Robots Coalition, for an internationally binding instrument on autonomous weapon systems precisely because of this, because there is currently no way of ensuring that there is any oversight, there is no accountability, and companies are some of the parties here that are able to simply skirt all of that whilst deriving most of the profit.
What you're saying is that the fog of war, which was already thick, is being made thicker by AI.
Absolutely.
Matt Mahmoudi of Amnesty Tech, Cambridge University, thanks for speaking with us here at the Listening Post today.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, this past week, a renowned Palestinian historian, Walid Khalidi, passed away at the age of 100. He was born in Jerusalem in 1925, 23 years before the State of Israel was established. Khalidi will be remembered for his pioneering work in uncovering the facts of the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948, including the Zionist master plan for the occupation and ethnic cleansing of Palestine. He was a skilled debunker of Israeli historical falsehoods, and he understood the international dynamics that sustained them. A speech that Khalidi made at the UN in 2009, in which he talked about the importance of U.S. media and government support for Israel, sounds like it could have been delivered yesterday.
It is defended by U.S.-supplied arms, sustained by the U.S. mass media, shielded by U.S. diplomacy, and often manned by armed U.S.-born colonists. The U.S. is a major part of the problem and the major actor in the solution.
Walid Khalidi embodied the kind of historical knowledge that Israel and its backers have tried so hard to suppress.